Hey y'all, it's Bear, and today I'm here to give you some horror recommendations for romance readers. A question I get asked a lot, because while I primarily read horror, I do read lots of different genres. I get asked a lot online about like gateway books. I'll be like, I'm a romance reader, but I want to get more into horror, or I read science fiction, or I read fantasy, or I read whatever genre, and I want to get into horror. Today, because it's February, it's still February, so technically this Valentine's themed video is not late. I'm gonna recommend you like 9 books that I think are good for romance readers who want to kind of look over to the dark side a little bit. People who want to dabble into the horror genre. Once again, let me go ahead and say, I know that romance books have to have happily ever after. These are horror books. They don't all have a happily ever after. Number 2, statements I make about romance readers are generally based on my friends who read romance and the booktubers and bookternet people I follow who read romance. Those statements may not apply to you. 3, I don't read a whole lot of romance as a genre. I like my romance to be more a subplot to a bigger situation. Romance is just often included in the books that I do read. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, I think the easiest introduction for romance readers to get into horror is to start by reading witchy romance novels. So things like The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling and Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman. Both of these books have horror elements. They have ghosts and summonings and revenants and rituals and stuff, but they have like a curse and relationships. In the Ex-Hex specifically, it is a romance novel, just a Halloween witchy romance novel, where our protagonist has cursed her ex from their younger days, and now that the ex is back in town, basically all the magic in town is going awry, and there are ghosts, and like things are coming to life that shouldn't be coming to life, and there are accidents happening. And in Practical Magic, there's kind of a family curse that the women in the family are destined to like kill their true loves, essentially. Like, they can't be in happy relationships. So I think these are really great starter books. Anything that's like witchy romancy, that has like a curse around it, usually that has like darker elements that tie into play, that will lead you further into your horror journey. Next, I want to talk about authors that traditionally write in genres outside of horror, mystery, thriller, because whenever I say horror, please understand that I also group mystery, thriller into that. Also like suspense and anything of that sort. Like, it's all horror to me. So for authors who write outside of that genre, typically I'm going to recommend 2, Sherry Demeline and Alyssa Cole. Sherry Demeline writes like science fiction, speculative, stuff like that. And Empire of Wild has been described as a sexual thriller. I disagree. I think it's more of a paranormal thriller. And Alyssa Cole, if you're a romance reader who's watching this video, you probably know who Alyssa Cole is. Also writes a lot of outside of historical romances, but I mainly know Alyssa Cole outside of when no one is watching for her historical romances. So in Empire of Wild, we follow a woman whose husband has gone missing, and it's been like a year to the day that he's gone missing, and she's never stopped trying to find him. And she realizes that he may have been kidnapped by like this culty situation and turned into a Rougarou, which is essentially like native werewolf. It goes deeper than that, but for a beginner level, you need to understand native werewolf. And realizes that her husband may be the one that's like targeting everyone and killing people. She has to fight to get him back and kind of save the day. Emotions run very high in this. There's lots of tension, lots of good writing, lots of like high emotion. And then when no one is watching, we follow a girl who is basically watching her predominantly black neighborhood become gentrified as white people are moving in and the black residents are mysteriously disappearing. There is also a romantic subplot in this where the protagonist finds herself attracted to one of the people moving in. So I think something that is of note of both of these books is because they write in very different genres usually, they know how to write tension, they know how to write emotion. Their writing is very evocative, it makes you feel things. Sherry Demeline, so much of this story is tied into trauma as an Indigenous person, and obviously that comes through very clearly. With Alyssa Cole, a lot of this book is tied into Black trauma, and that comes through as well very clearly. And I think it's also worth noting about Alyssa Cole that because she usually writes romances, she knows the words to pull feelings out of you. She knows how to write books that are going to make you feel exactly what she needs you to feel. So I think if you're looking for like the big feelings, I would go with these two. Then if you want something that's more than big feelings and just like over dramatic as fuck, because I also feel like a lot of romance is like grand gestures and big showings of things and like these elaborate declarations and stuff, at least in the ones that I've read. And this is actually kind of controversial as to whether this is considered horror or not, but I've always considered The Picture of Dorian Gray to be horror, because let's be real, what's scarier than some twink who's terrified of aging, who's like, let me stay young and beautiful forever and murder people? And then the portrait just keeps getting uglier and uglier as the years go on, and he kills more people, and it's just so interesting. But everything in this book is so like kind of larger than life and feels very like rich, and Dorian is just like the most overdramatic fucking little twink in the world. So if you like the overdramatics, if you like the big grand gestures and the lavish descriptions and stuff, I would say go with an Oscar Wilde, but specifically Picture of Dorian Gray. Another thing that I've noticed, and this is a trend that I've noticed amongst my internet buddies, is if you read romance, typically you are going to enjoy Gothic horror more. I don't know what it is. I think I chalk it up to pretty dresses and like clothing descriptions and like I said, like the lush, like the lavish. Not that that has to be included in romance for it to be romance, but I feel like it's just a common thing. Like, when I read a romance novel, I'm going and looking for pretty dresses. Really good beginner Gothic fictions that I think that don't feel pretentious, because Gothic fiction can sometimes feel very pretentious and I don't like it. House of Salt and Sorrows by Aaron A. Craig is a really good young adult. It's also a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling. They're all princesses who are being killed off one by one, essentially, by this like big family curse. And they're being like coaxed out of their room in their sleep, and they're dancing, and they're like entering this kind of like dream state, and they're dying. And because they're rich people, it's kind of like old money. You hear about like the crumbling castle and, you know, the decrepit rooms, and like it's very dark and moody in the same way that Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia is. I feel like this is arguably like the most widely read of the Gothic books on my shelf. Like, come on, who at this point hasn't read or heard of Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia? So in this one, we follow a woman named Noemi who ventures to save her cousin, essentially, after she receives a letter saying, help, the family that I've married into is trying to kill me. You have a mansion, you have like an observatory and gardens and pretty dresses and like crumbling art on the walls, and like, personally, this isn't the kind of romantic subplot I like, but I love Noemi as a character, and I feel like Noemi as a character is not that far attached from a lot of romance heroines that I've read, and that they're spunky, they challenge authority, they are characters who just kind of say, fuck it, I'm gonna do what I want, and you're gonna love me regardless. Moody vibes, pretty dresses, lavish, kind of like dark secrets coming to light. Like, romance readers, in my experience, just tend to vibe with Gothic fiction. So give that subgenre a shot would be my #1 suggestion. And lastly, we have 2 books that deal directly with romance in the plot. Like, the other ones I've mentioned all have romantic subplots, but these last 2 specifically deal with romance in the plot. Like, the plot is based around a romantic situation. So if you like the always the bridesmaid, never the bride kind of thing, I think that you would absolutely love My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyen Con-Braithwaite. Have I convinced enough people to read this book? I don't know, but I'm gonna keep trying. So we follow a woman named Corriday, whose sister Ayula goes through her fair share of boyfriends, and they all end up dead. And it's up to Corriday to help clean up the mess and save her sister from getting into trouble. So she's always like helping hide the body, cleaning up the blood, all of that stuff. Corriday starts to fall for this man at work. She works at a hospital and he's like a doctor. And she realizes that Ayula has now set her sights on the man that she's in love with. So she has to choose between saving her sister, who has just been murdering men, the whole time, or the man that she's falling in love with. So good. I'm going to reread this one this year. I think I'm overdue for a reread of My Sister the Serial Killer. And the last book I think is probably my #1 recommendation out of all of these. If you're a romance reader and you want to get into horror, then you need to read A Dowry of Blood. This is a Dracula retelling, sort of. It's from the perspective of one of Dracula's wives, his first wife, Costanza. It's told in letters, and it's her life with Dracula this abusive, charismatic, polyamorous relationship where the three wives, one of whom is a boy in the book, start to realize that their relationship with Dracula is not healthy. It's toxic and they need to escape the situation. So it's her finding her own power, finding power in the people that she loves, and escaping this like shitty abuser. And this is bisexual and it's queer and polyamorous and it's romantic in the sense that like all of them love each other in different ways, but they all come together against the abuser and they all discover their own worth and their own value. So these are the 9 books that I'm going to recommend to you if you're a romance reader looking to get more into horror. If you've read any of these, let me know what you think. If you're a romance reader looking to get more into horror, let me know if there are any specific things you're looking for and I can try and help with that down in the comments. But yeah, that's all we have today. So if you enjoyed this video, you can let me know by liking, subscribing, sharing, etc., as well as answering the comment question of the day. Comment question of the day, I want to know, I have a couple. I want to know what your favorite romance book is, what your favorite horror book is, if you notice any similarities between the two, and then finally, let me know what genre you would like to see me cover next. If you want like sci-fi horror recommendations, if you want like adventure-y horror recommendations, like contemporary horror, let me know what you want. If you don't have time, you don't have the spoons, you don't have an answer, or you don't want to answer, let me know you made it all the way until the end of the video by leaving me an emoji, preferably a yellow heart or a smiley face emoticon. All my social medias will be linked downstairs, as well as places to support me further if you so choose, like my Patreon, my PayPal, my Amazon wishlist, etc. And yeah, that's all I have for you today. I hope you have a wonderful whatever it is. Wherever you are, I will see you next time with another video. Thank you for watching. Okay, cool. Bye! Do you see the Taylor Swift shirt? I'm so excited. My Taylor Swift merch finally came in. Can you see my dick? Because I'm not wearing pants. I want you to be able to see the shirt in the thumbnail. I'm cool with cutting off this part of my arm, but I need to like try to do like a flirty pose. It's 4 a.m. What am I doing with my life?